The Democrats run a zero, hope to win against Donald Trump, strategies failing. That's the bottom line from an ABC Washington Post poll that shows Donald Trump 9 points ahead. What's amazing is the Democrats actually thought that by indicting President Trump, they would deter people from voting for him. And all it's done is solidify his base and show him to be strong, effective, and basically completely unafraid of facing whatever consequences and facing troubles, something that's needed at this time. Watch Donald Trump in Iowa. This is really pretty indicative of how he's handling things. This is a couple of days ago in Iowa.
But nothing would have happened. This is election interference. That's all it is. This is election. These are Biden indictments. These aren't indictments. People say, sir, you've been indicted, like it's legit. The fake news back there. Oh, that's a lot of them. Look at them. Got a lot of cameras going. Whoa. Got a lot of cameras going. But no, it's fake stuff. Think of it. This man, first time it's happened in this country. It happens in banana republics. It happens in third world countries a lot. But this man indicted his political opponent, who's leading the Republican Party by 50 to 60 points, and who's leading him. One came out today by 9 points. That's a lot, actually. It's got an expression. If you can't beat him, indict him. Find something. Find something. Upon my inauguration, I will immediately terminate every open borders policy.
Find something. That's exactly what the Biden strategy has been. Turn his Department of Justice loose and let rogue political prosecutors attempt to take down Biden's political opponent, Donald Trump. The left should have understood from the last 5 years, 6 years of trying to do this same exact strategy, Russia, the same exact strategy. Oh, Ukraine. That strategy's failed. Donald Trump has proven himself to be immune from those attacks. And so but once again, it's the only thing they've got. And one of the challenges they have, and I'm just going to reference the poll that President Trump mentioned, ABC Washington Post poll that came out a couple of days ago, which shows Donald Trump with a 9-point lead. And it's really indicative of what's going on in terms of how people are viewing things. This came out on Sunday, September 24th, so it was done middle of September. And this is what it's got. First of all, Joe Biden's underwater. He's 19 points underwater. 56% think he's doing a crummy job. 37% aren't paying attention. You've got on the economy. Joe Biden has spent the last month and a half talking about how Bidenomics is working. That's been their drumbeat. That's where they've hung their hat. The economy is great. It's the best economy in the history of the world. We're doing fantastic. That's where he's hung his hat, his political hat, right there on the economy. 30% approve of his handling of the economy, 64% disapprove. Every single time Joe Biden whispers, Bidenomics, it's working. Every time he does, his numbers go down. Immigration situation at the border, even worse. The flooding of our country from people across the border, 23% approve of Biden's handling, 62% don't approve. And the rest apparently are just befuddled by a strategy that appears to say, come on in, we're not going to enforce our laws. So it's a really just astonishing kind of polling from ABC Washington Post that shows that Joe Biden's policies are being rejected left and right. Let's just take a look at some of the things that, when you look at the presidential election, Donald Trump, 40 of Republicans, 54% say they support Trump, 43% say name some other candidate. But in this poll, he's still, that means he's up 40 to 50 points on anybody who's out 40 points on any of the other candidates. 62% of the Democrats would prefer somebody besides Joe Biden be their nominee. 62%, almost 2/3. Only one in every three, 33%, one in every three Democrats say, gee, let's go with Joe. I mean, that's astonishing. And yet he doesn't have, for all intents and purposes, competition in the primaries because he's frozen them out. You know, you've got Bobby Kennedy Jr., who's running, but he's stuck at 12, you know, between 5 and 12%. Because in Democratic circles, if you say things like, we need to close the border, if you say things like, gee, maybe we ought to be careful before we shut down our economies and dictate medical treatments from the federal government, regardless, with very little information and knowledge. Kennedy's been saying that, but that's not on the Democrat side. That doesn't poll all that well. And then you've got the vote preference. This is all adults, so it's not registered voters. It's not even registered voters. It's all adults. So let's just be clear. This is the kind of poll that Republicans typically do worse in. Republicans typically do worse in an all adults poll, just historically speaking. But not Donald Trump. Donald Trump's beaten the hell out of Joe Biden, 51-42 in an all adults poll. And that matters for a very simple reason. We talk about things that can be done in elections and things that need to happen. The fact of the matter is, when you go down and you look at some of the conclusions, you get some really interesting conclusions, but the one I'm going to focus on right now, since this is an all adults poll, among people who say they did not vote in 2020, so non-voters. Remember, we had this massive voter turnout. We had, over 150 million people voted in the last presidential in 2020. But a lot of adults did not vote. A lot of people who were eligible to vote, did not vote, did not participate. Among those who reported who say they did not vote in 2020, Trump has a 57 to 32% advantage currently. Now in May, it was 52-31, so it's up 6 points. But that is an astonishing number. That is an astonishing number. And the reason it's an astonishing number is because what it means, if you just randomly went out and registered voters who are not currently registered to vote, and you without doing anything but going around to a suburban neighborhood and registering people who are not registered to vote, you would get six out of 10 of them would be Trump voters. And 1 out of 10 undecided, and only 3 out of 10 would be for Biden. Without doing anything that was at all targeting, without any sophistication, if you go to a suburban neighborhood and do that, you're going to register more Trump voters than you are Biden voters. That's really unusual. And the fact that they have an opinion, a pretty strong opinion on things like the economy, tells you that these are voters who might be more motivated. And they see what's been Donald Trump's been subjected to, and they don't care. Because ultimately, these court cases, they just say, okay, that's just political noise. What's happened in my life? Well, what is happening in their life? It's pretty simple. We had Joe Biden said, we're going to just basically roll on Bidenomics. It's working. Roll the dice on Bidenomics. Views of the economy of this poll. Overall economy, the economy overall, 25% say it's good. 74% say it's not so good or poor. So 26 by 1 out of 4 thinks that Bidenomics is working. Food prices, 91% say not so good or poor. Might be a good time if you just want to help, want to do something, get involved, to go to your grocery store and ask permission to set up a voter registration table at the grocery store, because 9 out of 10 of the people are coming out there pissed off at Joe Biden because of high grocery prices. Gas, energy, 87-12. Once again, it's not an ideal environment, but if gas station owners, independent gas station owners, having a voter registration form sitting on their counter might actually register people to vote who are coming in and they're mad. They're already mad at paying the gas prices, and say, don't blame me, blame Joe. We were energy independent under Trump. We're not energy independent now. If you're mad about gas prices, register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, do it now. Average incomes, 21%, excellent or good. 75%, 75%? Yeah, 75%, not good. Under Donald Trump, people made more than $6,000 in real wages, meaning how much money they were making versus the inflation rate, how much inflation cut out of them. Under Donald Trump's 4 years, you got a $6,000 raise on average. Under Joe Biden, you have a $4,000 pay cut. That's from Joe Biden's Bureau of Labor Statistics. This isn't made up stuff. This is real. And people understand that. People understand that they're doing worse, that things cost more and their paycheck isn't keeping up. And that's Bidenomics. So you've got some devastating news for Joe Biden, because last time I checked, everybody buys food, and everybody goes off and they, believe it or not, they buy gas. And so if everybody's buying food, and 91% are saying, hey, food prices have gone up, this is bad, wrong direction, Joe. Wrong way, Joe. You can't get around that. That's a massive roadblock. Because last time I checked, we all have to eat. If you've gone out to a restaurant lately, you know really how bad it is, because what used to be, you fast food restaurants, you go through drive-through and get two burgers and basically don't have to supersize them, and you end up with a $20-25 in terms of cost. So everybody knows that. Everybody's feeling it. Gas. Everybody drives by the pump, by gas stations every day. They see it. They buy gas, and they sit there and they look at $50-$60 in California, $100, and they say something's horribly wrong. Joe Biden's what's horribly wrong. At least that's what people believe. Ironically, on the unemployment rate, he doesn't even get credit on the unemployment rate, which is at full employment. We're 3.8%, I think is what we're at now, which is a pretty darn good unemployment rate. But he doesn't even get credit for that. 35% say he's doing excellent or good, 57% not so good. Why? Well, because people view their jobs as a means to make the money to live their lives. And given that they're having to scrimp and save and work twice as hard just to get the same position, same place, they're not that happy about it. So he gets no credit, very little credit on the one issue out of these 5 that he should be doing well. Because in fairness, the economy, the jobs numbers aren't terrible. The jobs numbers that are terrible are the ones that talk about average incomes and the fact that you've lost a lot of money in real wages. So what you end up with in this poll are a number of other interesting things, and I'm not going to kind of belabor a lot of them, but because a lot of people we've written a lot about it. And if you want to read some things about it from the latest polls, go on to getliberty.org, our website, getliberty.org, click on research, and there's probably 20 articles on various polling and analysis of what's going on. One of the things that's clearly going on is Joe Biden's got a problem with minority voters, particularly Hispanics. And this same poll, this Washington Post ABC poll, which they do it monthly, in May, Biden has only had 50% support from members of racial and ethnic minority groups. Means that's an incredibly bad number for a Democrat, and yet he's only got 50% support. Since then, the May number, where Trump was 32% in May, he then jumped in the next poll up to 39%, and now he's at 43% support. That is Joe Biden is not picking up any additional Hispanic, additional Asian, additional Black support. The people who said in May that they support him, it hasn't changed. He's not growing that number. And as people then begin to make up their minds and think about it, as we come closer and closer to thinking about a presidential election, even in light of all the indictments and everything else, Donald Trump's gone up 11% with minorities in this poll. 11%. While Biden is stagnant at 50. 50 may be his top number. If 50 is his top number, he's dead politically. I mean, it's an astonishingly low number. And for a guy who basically got the nomination in 2020 because of support of James Clyburn and Blacks in South Carolina, who won him the South Carolina primary, for a guy who essentially owes his presidency to minority voters, it's pretty astonishing that capped out at 50% support amongst minorities. Remember, this is all adults, so it may not equate to actual how people vote when you get to actual real voters. But what it tells you is registering people to vote is, the people who are not currently registered, once again, 6 out of 10 of them are Trump supporters. So if you're a Trump supporter, that's a pond to fish in. Voter registration is important. Voter registration, we ought to be, the Americans for Limited Government, and we've got some voter registration programs we've done in the past. We're actively working to try to get those voter registration programs up and running, because it just makes sense. It's a fertile. It's kind of like the field's ready to be harvested, and the question is, are we going to go out and harvest it, or are we going to sit around? So that's just astonishing. You look at a group that has been focused on, particularly in the Midwest, non-Hispanic white Catholics, has been a swing group in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, a lot of the Midwestern states, and where a lot of people from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe settled over time and brought their Catholic heritage. And so it's really it's a European ethnic, non-English, non-ethnic kind of, a lot of times blue collar people who have a long heritage in this country and are proud Americans, but are a battleground between Democrats and Republicans historically. And what you see is that non-Hispanic white Catholics are now, in February, they supported Trump 63-33, dropped to a dead heat in May, and now it's back to 66-32. So from February, Donald Trump's bounced his lead up by 4%. He's leading by more than 2-1 amongst non-Hispanic white Catholics. And electoral college rich states, Minnesota, you have Minnesota, maybe less, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, even Illinois, heavily Democrat Illinois. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. When combined with the problem Biden has with non-white voters, this is a huge deal. So what you have is Joe Biden has to try to shore up his base, and his base has rejected his anti-worker policies that the Green New Deal policies that throw people out of work, the emphasis on the essentially the Ivy League policies, which don't really care about the average person out there who works for a living. They're being rejected. That's a very visceral thing. And since Joe Biden, his whole career has gotten those votes, Lunch Bucket Joe, he's gotten those votes. That's been his base. The people he brought to the table were blue collar, working class people. And unfortunately for him and his presidency, his lunch pail has been opened up. And all we see is our policies. We see corruption and policies of destruction for the middle class. It doesn't work. This poll is so bad for the Bidens. It's almost, you can almost read this poll and understand why you're beginning to hear whispers that from a lot of the Democrats and some of the various media companies are beginning to talk about some cognitive issues that Joe Biden might or might not have. So you're beginning to see those kind of whispers about it to try to create an environment where their base Democratic voter will accept a change at the top in terms of who the nominee for 2024 is. This kind of poll is driving that. Because if the Democrat elites don't believe that Joe Biden can win, they will jettison him as fast as possible, because they can't imagine allowing Donald Trump to win again, and to win with a knowledge of what the swamp did to him and a knowledge of how to actually get things done in Washington, D.C. that he didn't have when he first came to the presidency. They can't imagine allowing that to occur, because Donald Trump is a whirlwind. He's a tornado. He's a tornado that go through the swamp. He's a strong leader who doesn't put up with garbage and will stand up to our enemies, will stand up to China, will actually create, basically fill the power vacuum as we've created in the Middle East, as the Biden administration continually gives money to Iran and criticizes Saudi Arabia and criticizes Israel and criticizes countries that are, in terms of power balance in the Middle East, the countries that offset Iranian projection of power throughout the region. Joe Biden picks sides in the Middle East, and I don't care if you like Saudi Arabia or not, truthfully. Fact is, from a geopolitical standpoint, a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel is an important counterbalance against Iranian aggression and Iranian dominance in the Middle East. A deal between Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia even more strong. And so what was set up in the Abraham Accords by Donald Trump at the end of his administration, reestablishing that, regrowing that, and cementing that, is in U.S. interests. It is in U.S. interests for us to go and reestablish energy dominance, just energy independence, energy dominance, by getting rid of the Biden policies that are working against that, and aggressively putting in place policies that promote that. Not just passive, let the market work. The Democrats, through the Biden policies, have destroyed the market. They've created a market where expensive and unreliable energy is now relatively inexpensive. So we have to get rid of the policies, put the thumb on the scale for energy that is unreliable and, quite honestly, not ready for prime time, and make it so we end up creating an environment where we can actually get some refineries built in this country, so we don't have to ship our oil overseas in order to make gasoline, to meet our needs. Some simple stuff. We're always going to ship overseas, the oil that we get out of fracking. It's a different type of oil than what we use to turn into gasoline. Other countries use it for other stuff, and it's valuable. It's valuable oil, but it's just different than what our refineries are set up to deal with, and different than what our cars are set up to burn. So it's kind of one of those things where there'll always be trade in oil, but the fact is we want that trade to be a balanced trade of where it's a benefit to us. Well, we're exporting more oil than we're bringing in. Donald Trump will refill the petroleum reserves, the strategic oil reserves that Joe Biden emptied for his own political gain, and now it's created an environment where they're significantly, the stockpiles are as low as they've ever been since it got started. So Donald Trump's a strong leader. He's going to take charge. He's going to be the guy who people are going to look to and depend upon to try to fix some of the problems that face America and reestablish America's place in the world. And Joe Biden isn't. And Joe Biden can't overcome that. That's my analysis of this. I hope it's helpful to you. I don't know if you could read any of this stuff, but it's we're going to now go to the chat and do a couple of chat things here. Let's see if I can actually get this thing to open up in a wider. Let's see here. Boom. And here we go. Yikes. Hey, you want to look at that all day? I don't either. We're going to try it again. I'm just going to look at it from over here, and that way it'll all work out. And boom, 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 boom. How about that? You can look at all my stuff there. Okay, so now I'm going to go and take it over here and go that. And that was exciting. And I've got, God dang it. Oh, well, okay. I don't know what I'm doing this wrong, but I'm going to just take it back over here. I'm going to stop the screen, and that way I can just get that, and boom, and boom. Okay, there we go. Finally figured it out. Sorry for the delay. I gave you a chance to chat a little bit and get the muscles working. We haven't done this. I haven't done this for about a week, and I apologize. My muscle memory is pretty poor, apparently. Betsy Burns. Sorry, my phone's acting up. McCarthy's causing people to lose faith in the Republican actions. They aren't fulfilling what they promised they would do when they got in, and that's to do with McCarthy. Betsy, that whole situation is a real challenge, and it's one of the problems is, first of all, I'm going to say this. I think that we have a lot of problems in the country, and I would love for them all to be able to be solved in this budget fight. And I wish that we had individual appropriations bills coming up on the floor. So for a week, you could actually have amendments to those bills and put in solutions to deal with a lot of these problems that exist, and put in cuts to deal with a lot of the problems that exist, and to move the numbers so we have a lower, so we're able to move off of a $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion budget deficit. But I have to kind of look at it where we are. We have people surging across the border at levels that we've never seen before. We have literally 250,000 people a month are coming across the border illegally, and those are the ones we know about. It's such an incredible invasion of largely young men, not exactly great for security purposes. And we've got this invasion going on, and it's dangerous for our country. And there's an opportunity to do something about that. There's a deal on the table to do something about that. You don't get the same level of cuts that I would like to see. You don't get the same level of budget cuts that I would like to see, but you do enforce the budget caps that were put in under the debt ceiling deal, which obviously were less than I would have liked, less than you would have liked. But at some point, we have to get something done and get the best deal you can get, fight with the Senate. And if the Senate doesn't give you anything, then don't pass it. And I don't know how McCarthy, I think Kevin McCarthy, by and large, I don't want to sound like a McCarthy apologist, but he's got a hard job. There's 5-vote majority. A lot of people in the House want to get stuff done on his caucus and in the conference, and he's got a hard job. And I just wish there was a little less rigidity on all sides, so we could get something done that cuts spending and gets the border under control. And if we can get some other things done, great. But at the very least, we have something that we're putting over to the Senate that we can have a fight about. And let's have a fight over this. Let's fight with the Democrats. Let's not fight with ourselves. Let's force the Democrats to vote for open borders. Let's jam it down their throats. And if they refuse to do anything but keep the situation the status quo, then the American public will judge them very harshly. But if we never give them the chance to have that fight in the Senate, and that fight when the Senate passes something else, and when we go back and we have a fight between the House and the Senate, if we don't allow that fight to occur, shame on us. And in a world where 5 nay votes stops anything from passing, at some point, we got to get to yes on something. Otherwise, what we're going to end up with is something that doesn't cut anything, that leaves spending unrestrained and creates problems, and is a lost opportunity. I've become a believer over time in the idea that let's get something done. And then when we have another fight, let's say in a month, just extend the CR for 1 month. Let's have another fight. Let's get something else done. And let's have a fight. I'll have a fight every single month over this. Okay? Because every single time you're having a fight, you're fighting for trying to rein in the Biden administration, trying to change the spending levels, trying to change the complexion of what's going on in this country. And so many things are going wrong. And that we're looking at a situation where if we try to pour them all into one bill, nobody understands that. But if we're sitting there saying, the border's a mess, we're dealing with the border in this bill, boom. 1 month later, you say, okay, we've got the border stuff done. You can't take that away. Now we're going to say, we need to have a 1% cut in how much we're spending, just 1%. Everybody knows they can afford 1%. Well, 1% spending in a budget is $6.7 trillion. 1% spending, is what? It's $667 billion. It's a lot. You know, $67 billion here, $67 billion there, and eventually you get somewhere. So you just do incremental changes, one fight at a time, and let's have a lot of those little fights, micro fights, where we can win, and force a debate. And let the Democrats say you can't cut 1% out of the budget. Let the Democrats say we want open borders. Let the Democrats say we want to preserve the political prosecution of President Trump. Let the Democrats defend the indefensible in terms of spying on the American public and the censorship of the American public. Let them defend that. And if they have to defend that, they will be destroyed on Election Day in November of 2024. But if we sit there and we just fight amongst ourselves and shoot at each other, the Democrats are the winners. That's stupid. And it's my hope and prayer that the Republicans will figure that out and get something over to the Senate so the Senate can fight it out. And the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer, can have to explain to the mayor of New York City why he's refusing to do anything to stem the influx of people from all over the world, of young men, capable young men who could work in their own countries, or coming here not to work. That's what I want Chuck Schumer to have to explain. But he doesn't have to explain as long as we keep the reforms of the immigration system bottled up in the House. So I really want to talk about that, but that's what I ended up talking about there. Sorry. Let's see here. I don't even know if you guys agree with me or not, but I just got to tell you, I'm going to diverge here. Okay. I know this is not what this whole thing was about, but I look at what you've got up here, and by and large, there's a whole lot of stuff in terms of policy. Ukraine. We talked about Ukraine. They're going to bring up a separate bill to fund Ukraine, $25 billion more than likely. They'll bring it up as a separate bill to fund Ukraine. So there's going to be a separate vote on that. There'll be a chance to fight Ukraine's spending and funding. It's a fight that we need to have. There's going to be a chance to, and quite honestly, Kevin McCarthy said, it's not going to be a rubber stamp this time. We're going to have we're going to have a real conversation. We're trying to figure out where the money went. The money we already spent went. Just, and maybe the Ukraine spending ought to be spent on restoring our own munitions reserves and dramatically increasing our munitions reserves so we have the capacity as a country to fight a battle if we have to fight it. We don't run out of bullets. We don't run out of Stinger missiles because we sent them all off to Ukraine. So maybe that might make sense above and beyond the $860 billion that Joe Biden wants to give the Pentagon this year. So we have enormous number of problems, and the power of the purse is the way for Congress to handle many of those problems. And my solution to this is Kevin McCarthy ought to do a very simple thing. He ought to say, we're going to solve these problems, but we're going to cut it into digestible pieces and solve them one at a time using the power of the purse. But you have to get people on board in the Republican conference, 218 of them, to agree of exactly what the strategy is. And that's the problem. I'm going to let you go. I hope you're encouraged by the polling numbers. They are dead on, super bad news for Biden. And the fact of the matter is, Biden thought that indicting President Trump was his key to victory, and it's turned out to be solidified his support, give him a street cred with a lot of rappers and the like, which have impact on the Black community, and he's effectively is growing his support. Because America, at times of trouble, wants somebody who is going to be tough, who's not going to back down, who isn't going to cower. And Donald Trump has proven himself to be tough, a tough guy who won't back down and won't cower. And ultimately, if you're dealing with the Chinese, you damn well better have somebody who's not going to cower and somebody they don't have anything on. And that's, and Donald Trump fits that description. This is not a Trump for president announcement. It's a statement of fact. And with that, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you very much for attending, and we will talk to you tomorrow.